Hi, welcome back to the Box of the Lights. In this video we're playing Theseus the Dark Orbit. This is one of those games that as soon as I picked it up I knew I had to do a video for this. I'm not going to do a whole series. It's primarily a two-player game. It's got a 3- and 4-player variant, which I'll mention as we go along. I'm going to do a single instructional video on this. It's out of Portal Games, my favourite board game publisher. And this is very much a strategy game. Don't be fooled by some of the artwork. This isn't one of your heavily themed, some people say a merry trash, dice rolling games. This is very much a strategy game with a nice rich theme. One of the first things you may feel when you pick this up is that it reminds you of Mancala. It's kind of Mancala with guns. Let's go through the setup, show you the components, and then teach you how to play. I've laid out all the components for the game here, and as I said, this is a 2 to 4 player game. I would say that this game is going to be great for me and my son to play together. It's primarily a 2-player game, and the 3 and 4 player games are kind of like variants. The idea of the game is that you've got to beat your opponent down from 20 life points down to 0. The variation playing 3-player is that instead of starting at 20 and losing life points, everyone starts at 0, and every time you hit one of your opponent or do damage to one of your opponent, you gain life. So you're racing up to 20. Okay, so that's the only variation really for 3 or 4 players. And there's also like a team deathmatch where it's 2 versus 2. So we've got 4 factions. There's 4 different factions, and each one brings its own unique style of play. On the blue and the grey factions, when you hit an opponent, you use this blue track and you're racing up to 20. If you're playing the red and the green, the Marines and the aliens, then you start your life points at 20 and you're trying to beat your opponent down to 0, so you won't use this blue track, what we call data points. Right, so this is the central scoreboard, and around this board, and you kind of set up in a circular fashion, and I'll show you that in a minute, you place these sectors. There's 3 common sectors that are always going to feature in the game, and then there's one sector that belongs to each of the 4 players. Greys, scientists, aliens and marines. Greys, these are like these grey aliens. You have to sticker these wooden tokens up yourselves. Lovely components, absolutely fantastic. Portal games always are. These are lovely wooden discs. The score track markers, and then we've got tokens. Each faction's got its own little set of tokens, and they're easily colour coded so you know which ones belong to whom. There is a 5th faction called Pandora. This doesn't introduce a 5th player. What it means instead is the Pandora, I guess this is an advanced addition or little expansion, if you like, that comes in the box. They don't have their own sector, but they kind of parasitise one of the existing players' sectors. Right, so these are like your home sectors, and these are common ones. Control room, corridor and tech bay. I'm going to set up a 2-player game, a regular 2-player game, and we'll use the aliens and the marines, I think. We'll start by playing the life and data points board in the centre of the table. We're just using the aliens and marines, so we're only going to be using this life point track. Remember, with the greys and the scientists, whenever they hit someone, they score data points. So you're trying to beat your opponents down to 0, but the greys and scientists will also win if they hit 20. We've also got a game end tracker, and this is going to progress up this track here and signify the end of the game. So it's going to start off the board. Place it here. Our marines and aliens are going to start at 20 life points, so we place their little wooden tokens here. Next we place the sector boards, and one way to do this is just to randomise them, place them around, but there's a suggested starting setup, and we'll do that. But of course, with the starting setup, it means that when you play the game, then your first turn is kind of predictable in a way, because it's the same setup each time, and you may develop strategies on what that best first move might be. Anyway, we're going to play the corridors down first, then the control room, and we need to place this malfunction token on the control room. Then the faction sector of the first player, this is the red players. You can spot them, they have these symbols here and a different back. Then the tech bay, and then finally the faction sector of the second player. And this forms the layout of the space station Theseus, on which the two teams are battling. We're making the red player first player, so place this, there's a little turn order card. You can use this to mark who the first player is as well, to remind you. It's not going to change during the course of the game, because once the first player's gone, then you're just taking turns. We have some upgrade tokens too, place those somewhere central. Then we have these bonus cards. Okay, we need to give these a bit of a shuffle. We're not going to use them all, so it's going to be a random set used in each game, but we're going to place them on these spots here that have this little bonus. I'll show you how they're used once we get into the game. For the moment, just deal them. Let's go back to the box. And also, we don't need a full complement of faction cards. We only need 15. So we've got a bigger stack, and normally, again, you just shuffle them and then draw 15 to form a player deck. Now, if you're starting out, what you can do is look along the edge here, and some of them have got a couple of these little lozenge marks. These represent the difficulty or the complexity of the faction cards, and it's recommended for your first game just pick the cards with no complexity, and as you get more experienced you can start adding in the kind of the level 1 cards, level 2, level 3 into the mix. I'm going to mix everything in for our first play. So we want to draw 15 cards, and then the rest go back to the box. 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. And once you've got your deck, turn it face up. And this is going to be like a blind draw deck. So you only ever see the top card of this deck. And in this game, your opponent doesn't know any more than you know, right? So you've got equal amounts of information. There's no secret hands or anything that's not unknown. The only thing is this deck. That's the only limitation to that. You can see the top card but nothing below it. Done the same for the red player. These tokens, these can go back to the box. These are just little things that, well, if you're playing the 4-player team deathmatch, these tokens represent which team you're on. And now each player draws the top 3 cards from their deck. We're going to keep 2 and place 1 on the board. So we just have to pick one of these guys. I think we'll place hidden. Each of these cards is going to go in these slots, okay? And they affect what happens in that sector. So when there's units moving through these sectors, and our units, these are these guys, are going to be moving around in a clockwise fashion. These cards are going to be in these slots. Different sectors have different numbers of empty slots, and they're going to cause something to happen, trigger something to happen. So for example, this one says 1 wound for each enemy unit in here during an onslaught. An onslaught's when we attack our opponents. Okay, so you've kind of got a hidden alien. And we can place this anywhere on any sector. So I think green's going to place it here. And this is called installing a card. We've installed a card in an empty slot. During setup you can't place any cards over these bonuses, right? You probably don't know what that means right now, but just keep that in your mind. You've got to pick an empty slot. The other 2 cards that we chose, when we picked 3, we've got to place these here in what's called our faction's starting sector's pending card slots. These are cards which are not yet in play, but when we're in this sector we can bring them into play. Okay, I'll show you that when we get into the gameplay. You see this little clock here. Each sector has 1 or 2. This one actually has none. 2, 1, 1, 2 pending slots. So these are places where you can draw cards from the top of your deck, kind of have them ready to be deployed or installed onto Theseus. Red player does the same. We've got ambush, double shot, landmine. Let's place a landmine, why not? So these go in our pending, and we'll put the landmine, I think, up here. We'll install it in the corridor. Next we get to place our 3 units. So starting with the starting player, they're going to place 2, and the second player will place 2, then we'll place our 3rd, and then the second player will place their 3rd. These go in these rooms, okay? So this part of each sector is where cards are installed. This here represents the actual rooms where units are placed. We place 2 in our starting factions sector. These white lines, these are walls, these are doorways. There's 4 rooms in each sector. A room can have more than 1 unit, and each unit goes in one of these rooms. So for example, this room here is joined to this room via this doorway. This room is joined to this room via this corridor. Now that's important because when you're attacking each other or attacking your enemies, if you had an enemy here for example, there's no link, was walls in the way. So if this guy was attacking this guy, he couldn't. His line of sight is blocked, if you like. So I think that the red player is going to place his two units here, and then green places his units, let's say here and here. You'll notice that these are double-sided. This is your basic side, and this is your upgraded side. Okay, and this reflects the number of wounds that we can do when we are attacking. One thing to bear in mind is once you place these in their rooms, they're not going to be able to move rooms. There's no mechanism for changing rooms within a sector. Instead, when units move, they move in a clockwise fashion from sector to sector. Alright, but they don't move within the rooms of a single sector. Now our second unit, again make sure it's the basic side up. We can place this anywhere, starting with the first player. So although we're only in setup, we're playing the game already. And I think we shall place it over here. Actually we'll duck into this room here, I think. And for green we'll place it here. The significance of this will become evident once we start the first turn, which we are going to do now because we're ready to go. Before we begin the first turn, do be aware of one thing though. The Marines here, when they attack, they do 1 damage. See this little lightning bolt? When they're upgraded, they can attack 3. Okay, so they can do 3 damage. The aliens, they don't have any lightning bolts, so they don't do any damage during the attack phase. Okay, so these basic ones, they're just kind of slinking about. They can't attack until they're upgraded. However, the aliens do have things like tentacles and hive, these cards that are going to be installed here, these faction cards that do damage, and also they've got these little alien tokens, so some of these cards can bring these tokens into play, and they're kind of spawning new aliens that can appear in rooms, and they do damage, but once they're attacked, they're removed. Let's start. First player's red, so they're going to go first, and the turn order is we move. We can then trigger action cards, then we trigger the abilities of the sector we end our movement in, and then we can play these pending cards potentially that are sitting in the sector we've ended in. So let's start with movement. All we do is pick one of our units. We've got 1 here and 2 here. Let's grab one of these in our starting sector. And our units can always move clockwise, and the number of sectors they move, and this is where the likeness perhaps or the feel of Mancala comes in. We're only moving 1, but the number of sectors we move in a clockwise direction is equal to the number of units, ours or the enemies, that are in this sector. So there's 2 units here. That means we can grab one of these and move 2 sectors clockwise. No more, no less. Okay, so there's 2 units here. Let's grab 1, 2, and then choose a room. Actually, we'll put him here. The next time this unit moves, he'll be moving 3 sectors clockwise. And this is where this game is very kind of strategical and kind of like an abstract strategy, where you've got to you've got to do that looking ahead, trying to figure out what the shape of the board is going to be when you've finished your movements and so on. So I know, for example, on my next turn, I can move him 1, 2, 3, back to my faction sector and get an upgrade, right? Unless the green player now, the aliens, move one of these away. 1, 2, 3. So they're heading in here, potentially. And then my red unit here would only be able to move 2, 1, 2, and end up over there in the control room. Okay, so you can see already that you're straight into the gameplay, you're straight into figuring out the tactics of the game. Now, if there were any traps, then we would get those triggered at the end of our movement. There aren't as it goes, so now we move into the actions card phase. These are action cards, the ones with this little arrow in the bottom left. So if you end in a sector with action cards of your colour, you would then trigger them. So we don't have any, so we skip through the action card phase and we move into the sector action phase. Now we've ended up in an enemy sector. That means nothing happens in the sector action phase. We can't activate an enemy faction's sector. However, we end up in our own faction, then we can. And we've got two choices, it's an or. We don't need both of these. We can take an upgrade, grab one of these upgrade tokens, and that allows us to upgrade our units, and also it allows us to upgrade some faction cards that we've got installed or pending. And the alternative action is that we kind of clean up one of these enemy cards that are installed. So instead of taking the upgrade, we could remove hidden, for example. The other sectors, so we've got the tech bay here. If you end here, when you trigger this sector, it allows you to move one more unit, so you kind of activate one of your other units. If you end in the corridors, then an onslaught happens. An onslaught is when your units will attack the enemy units. And then finally the control room, this is when we take this malfunction token and we can place it on any of our enemies' installed cards and stop them working. Okay? So that's the sector action phase. We're here, nothing happens. Now the pending cards phase. If there are no pending cards, currently there's 2, then we can draw the top one for our deck and put it in one of these pending slots, empty pending slots. If there is an enemy pending card here, then we replace it with one of ours, so that's what we're going to do in this instance. Or if we've got one of our pending cards here, then we can install it, and we can install it, it doesn't have to be in this sector, we can install it anywhere in any sector. So we're going to choose to, and it's the only option available to us, draw the top card of our deck. It's Barricade. And I think we'll kick out Tentacles. Tentacles says, uses up one more move point here. And we'll put Barricade in. Barricade says that while we're in this sector, we're immune to enemy attacks. Pretty cool, huh? Well, Tentacles is discarded. Let's just create a little discard pile. Now remember, these are pending. They're not active yet. But if we were to come around and activate this sector again, we could pick up Barricade and then install it anywhere on the Theseus ship, in any sector. That's it, we're done. So that's the turn. Let's whip through it again. Now the turn moves over to the green player and they can choose to move. So we've got 2 options. We can move this one. There's only one unit here, so just one space. So we can come and move in here. Or we can move one of these 3 spaces. 1, 2, 3. We would end up in our enemy factions sector. Well, I think we're going to move this one. So we move. There aren't any traps here. So nothing triggers during movement. But there's a special rule. If we occupy the 4th room, so we filled up this sector, then we initiate something called a lesser onslaught. What this means is we're going to have a battle now in this sector. Now as it goes, all of our aliens here, they don't do any damage, so nothing's going to happen as it goes. So we'll move straight into the action cards phase now. There aren't any installed. Now the sector action phase. Now we can take an upgrade. So let's upgrade one of our units. You take a token. Okay, and then you can use this token any time. So I could save it and use it later if I wish, but I'm not. I'm going to use it straight away. Upgrade this alien. Right, chuck the token straight back again. Now the pending cards phase, and we've got a choice this time. This is optional, but there's no reason why I shouldn't. We can either replace Barricade with Hive, the top card on my draw deck here, or I can install Duplication. So I think I will install Duplication, and I'm going to place it over here next to Hidden, because this one says it duplicates the effects of adjacent cards. Alright, so basically this becomes another Hidden. If I'd have thought ahead, I might have put Hidden here, and then I could have put Duplication here on top of this bonus card. If you install one of your factions where there's a bonus, you take that bonus. As it goes, Hidden's here, and I want Duplication adjacent. The good thing here is if I do manage to install another card here, then Duplication will duplicate both. Alright, it duplicates the effects of adjacent cards, plural. Right, red's turn. Let's move this one as one unit, so we're going to move into here. This is Gateway. Gateway says now I can move another unit. I can't move the same unit again. You can't move the same unit twice. So it's either this one moving 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, or this one moving 1. So let's move this one 1 into the control room. Let's move in here actually. So now we activate the sector. There's no action cards here. So we grab this malfunction token and we can kick out one of our opponent's cards. I'm going to place it on Hidden. So now Duplication is not going to do anything. It basically the card stays there, but the malfunction means that this thing, you just play as if that card isn't there. Okay, and if that card isn't here, that means Duplication doesn't do anything. So it's quite a simple rule. This card's malfunctioned, ignore it until that malfunction token's removed and moved somewhere else. Pending cards, Onslaught is going to go here. Green player's turn. Let's take this guy. 1, 2, 3, 4. Remember it's 4 because there's 4 units here. And we'll go in here. We hit Gateway, so we move again. We can't move this one, so it's another one of these, and they're going to move 3 spaces. 1, 2, 3, that's into the enemy faction. So let's grab this one. 1, 2, 3, and we'll head in here. With no action cards, we don't activate the sector because it's enemy faction. Pending cards now. So let's take Ambush, I think. Get rid of that one. And we'll draw Hive and replace it here. Red player now, and we're going to pick this unit here, I think. There's 2 units here, so 1, 2. Now we're in the corridors. Movement phase, no traps here. Action card phase, no action cards here. Sector action phase. Right, now we do an Onslaught. Onslaught means that all of our units in every sector will attack the enemy units in that sector. So we're only looking here in the green faction sector. So we've got line of sight through this doorway on this alien unit. So we do 1 damage. We move their tracker down from 20 to 19. Pretty simple, huh? So that's sector action phase done. Pending cards. Right, so we can draw the top one here. It's another landmine. That goes here. Green player's turn. Green player's going to move 1 unit in here to the gateway. And we get to move again. Let's move this one. There's now 2 units in here, so 1, 2, and we've triggered corridors once more. This time there's a trap, there's a landmine here, it's a red one. Enemy receives 2 wounds, and it's a one-time use, so we discard this. Put this in our own discard pile, and then we receive 2 wounds. So a little bit of a beating. Action cards phase now, there's none here in this sector. Sector action phase, right now we do an onslaught. We have an enemy here with one of our aliens, but this guy is still basic, he's not upgraded, so he's not going to do any wounds. But this alien now is upgraded, so he's going to do some wounds. But although he's got three lightning strikes here, it doesn't mean he's going to do 3 wounds to this one. It just means he can attack 3 units. So if there were 3 red units here, it would do 3 damage. Okay, so these 3 lightning bolts mean inflict 1 wound on every enemy unit in this sector. We have line of sight through this door, so that's 1 wound. It drops from 20 to 19. Marines have finally suffered their first hit. There's only 1 pending slot, so abduction is drawn and replaces landmine. So he gets disregarded. Red player's turn. So that's it. That's the game. It's really straightforward, but there's tons of activity going on. You know, you've got all these different interactions of these cards that are pending, installed. You can grab these bonuses as well. So, for example, if I installed a card, abduction, let's say, and installed it here, I would take this bonus card, and this one says during your move you can go 1 section further. So this is like a one-time bonus. You put it in your player area, you can use it as a bonus. If I had played tentacles, and there's like this little icon on the back to remind you, let's say I installed tentacles here, I'd take one of these tentacle tokens and I'd place it here on the right of this room. The token's just a reminder, really, and the reminder is that any units passing through or through this room are impacted by tentacles. Tentacles is a trap that says enemy uses up 1 more move point when it moves through this room. Okay, so you kind of get a little grab on as he goes by. Here's another example. Hidden. So with hidden, again, look on the back. It has this little circle here to remind you that you're going to be placing a hidden token. That's one of these, and you kind of place these here. So they're not. And if this was installed here, you would place it here. And these are really to remind you that something's going to happen. Not so much. It's not a trap in that it triggers when you end your movement here. But in this case, it says that we give 1 wound for each enemy unit here during onslaught. So this token here is really a reminder that something's happening when we're in onslaught. How does the game end? There's a couple of ways the game can end. So you can see that with Marines versus Aliens, we're trying to knock each other down to 0. So if we do knock our opponent down to 0, then the game ends and you win. With the Greys and the Scientists, remember, you score data points for hitting your opponent. If you hit 20, then you win. We've also got this game end marker. We place this token here. If we have to place a card in a pending slot and our faction deck's empty, then we add this on to 3. Next time that happens, it moves up to 2, then 1, and then finally, if it ever reaches here, then the game ends. So you can see that there is kind of a game end condition that you can force along by emptying out your pending deck. And if you're ahead of the game, when the game end token moves, right, you've got through your pending stuff, you sum up your life points and your data points, and the one with the highest is victor. I'm going to suggest this game is highly recommended. If you like a game like Neuroshima Hex, it's the same kind of feel, right? Because it's very strategical. There's no hidden information as such, except for this deck of cards. In the same way with Neuroshima, really, that you're not quite sure which tiles you're going to draw. But everything is very, very much a strategy game with very little luck involved. A great 2-player duel, plays really quickly. The rules are really simple. Lots of action, high octane. Go check it out.